So the last, we've had a series of classes, and the last few weeks we've been talking about the watcher, we've been talking about the witness, and really, as the talks have unfolded, it's really, there's a purpose to it, because it's how the practice moves, it's how the practice goes. At first, we're working with the breath, we're working with noticing, we're working with what's coming up in the mind, thought patterns, emotions. And then at some point, there's a certain amount of stability, hopefully, that's coming in. And we are able more often to just be present to what's taking place. And we can call that being the witness, being the watcher. And as we develop the ability to witness, to watch, then what comes with that is a deeper calm or a deeper sense of equanimity. Equanimity being not moved by what's coming up in the mind. We're learning to be okay with what's coming up. And that's a big learning, right? That's a big learning. But through the stability we've gained through the mindfulness of breath, through the development of calm, through the development of equanimity, we're learning to be okay with what comes up. We're not so quick to react. We're not so quick to close the door. I don't have the poem in front of me, but the witness poem, that's why it talks about healing, because we're able to be with whatever comes up in the room in an open, loving way, right? We're able just to be calm, equanimous, and very present with whatever that is. So that's the practice. And it takes a long time, but it's steps, and at times we move forward and at times we slip back. But you never slip back as far. Once you're established, once you're doing this practice for a while and you have a daily practice or a consistent practice, you don't slip back as far. You don't stay as long in those dark places. We may still have anger, we may still have anxiety, we may still have depression, we may still have all types of things that are maybe not so pleasant. But with the development of mindfulness, with the development of the witness, we learn to be with what's there in a much more relaxed, open way. And that's a big shift. That's a big turning point. It's not about having those negative emotions or mental states not be there. It's not about not feeling bad sometimes, because everybody, sometimes you feel good and sometimes you feel not so good. But through the practice of awareness, through the practice of watching, we learn to be okay, because we know it's going to change, right? We know it's going to change. So with that understanding, with that presence, the ups aren't so up and the downs aren't so down. And by being in that non-reactive place, we begin to have insight into the mechanisms of our mind. We begin to see how certain things influence the mind in certain ways. And we could see it because we're more quiet, because we're more stable, because we're watching. So that's what we've been working with. And that is the work. That is the work. And when we are able to develop the witness, we start to see a quietness or a stillness that starts to come up more often. And it's not something that we're creating. It's something that unfolds when we're not clinging, when we're watching. So if we're watching, we're observing, we're not clinging. And when we're not clinging, then the underlying innate qualities of awareness start to come through. I've talked a lot recently about clarity. So there's a feeling of brightness that starts to present itself. In that feeling of brightness, there's also a feeling of not being stuck. Of not being in a sticky place. The brightness is an expression of the mind that's having a lighter touch on the present moment. We're being present with what comes up. But the touch of awareness, the touch of attention has a lightness to it. And even if something that we're watching, something that we're experiencing is sticky and doesn't want to let go, as we develop the capacity to watch, as we develop the innate clarity that's within us, there's a lightness to our experience of that. So this is what we practice. This is what we practice. I like to use that image of standing on the train platform, the train pulling in the station, the doors opening up, and we stay on the platform. We don't step on the train. We let the narrative come into the station and let it leave. The thought come into the station, we let it leave. The emotion come into the station and let it leave. So we begin to be able to have this light touch on our experiences. But along with that, we will see what takes us away from that clarity, right? We begin to see when we're in that state of clarity, we're able to touch things lightly, and then something comes up that we can't touch lightly. that we feel that in the mind, in the consciousness, we grab onto it. Maybe you feel it in the body, grab onto it. It's like, oh, okay. So we learn what trips us up. We learn what trips us up. We learn the things that move us in the direction of being tripped up. And we learn by watching the mind, right? By staying with the witness, we learn what trips us up, what leads us to being tripped up, and what leads us to letting go. So we develop that capacity of watching. We develop that capacity of that light touch. We practice that in the meditation through coming back to the breath. The mental state comes up, the feeling comes up, the thought comes up. So we practice it when we're sitting. But more importantly, we work with it in our daily life. And so at some point, we start to have more of a relationship with that sense of clarity, with that sense of watching. And it may not be all the time, but typically how the practice goes is we have it for short periods of time. It might be 15 or 30 seconds. But as we continue on with the practice, we find that we have longer periods of that sense of clarity, that sense of light touch, that sense of just being the watcher. So we develop that. That becomes the practice. We know when we have the light touch, and we know when we don't. Yet, as the watcher, we're okay with all of it. And when we're stuck and miserable, to the best of our ability, we're okay with that too. We work on that strength. We develop that capacity. So at some point, as we become more established in the watcher, and really what it is we're becoming more established just in that non-clinging awareness, right? We're watching anyway. There's always the knower. The knower is always here. Same word, same idea, same principle. The consciousness, the knower, the watcher, it's always here. But we move from that place. We're starting to identify with that. And from that, there's a clarity that develops. From that, there is a sense of quietness and a sense of spaciousness that develops around our experience, around the objects, let's say. There's a spaciousness that's in the mind. And this isn't some big far out experience. This is right here. This is right here, right now. And at some point, then we turn our attention towards that. We look at that sense of watcher, we look at that sense of knowing, and we rest there. We rest our attention on that. And when we abide there, if we're able to be with that, we see that the idea of subject and object, of two things, is made up. It's a false division in terms of our experience. There's only the knowing. That may be a concept that people aren't used to. But if you really look at your experience without evaluating, without putting concept on it, is there a difference between the subject and the object? Is there a difference between the watcher and the watched? And you don't have to have an answer. But as we develop the capacity to equanimously watch the experience that unfolds in front of us, at some point, there's a suddenness and there's a quietness that comes in. And we look at that. We rest in that. We abide there. And that is basically a place of no concept, of no idea, of not knowing. The purpose of meditation, if I may, is to understand our experience, what this experience is. Insight meditation, insight into what this experience actually is. And this is the progression. So we come to this point where we are without idea, we are without concept. We are looking at the bare fact of awareness. And we're sitting with that. It's not something you believe in. It's not something that somebody tells you and you take to be true. The purpose is to investigate this. And what we've done up to this point is we've just let go of narrative, we've let go of idea, we've let go of concept. And we've come to this place, we've even let go of the concept of subject-object. It's still an idea. And we've come to this place of an open, non-clinging awareness, and we're resting in it. whatever idea comes up about it, we let it go. And just like with the clarity that starts to express itself uh, from the seat of the watcher, the underlying principles of what this awareness is starts to shine forth. We're used to identifying with thought. We're used to identifying with the body. But we've taken a step back from all that. And we're learning to rest with our experience in a very quiet, open way. And letting that speak to us. We're learning to sit or stand at the door of the mystery of what it is we are. We're allowing that in because there's space for it. There's space for it to be. Guess what I have? I have a poem. The book came, Carol. The book came. This is from the woman who wrote The Witness or Witness. So let me read this. There is peace here, where the river widens to meet the sea. The rapids are past, the boulders and the rocky places at last give way to a broad sweeping current, flowing slowly into vastness. The river moves silently. Taste the salty tide that mark its demise, and slips without a backward glance into the ocean's infinite embrace. So, this place that we've come to, this place that we've come to abide in, it's standing at the door of the mystery of awareness, mystery of consciousness. And then life just returns to normal, right? We we start to develop a relationship with this. We start to develop a relationship with this. And we see how it's always there. We keep it close.